Professional curiosity in social work practice. How we can develop skills in professional curiosity. Welcome to the 6th presentation about professional curiosity. In this video, we'll be focusing on how we can develop our skills in professional curiosity. Columbo was a TV detective in days gone by. When he interviewed a suspect, just when he was finishing and about to leave, he'd turn around and then say, "Just one more thing." In the TV series, he'd usually catch them out with it. If you imagine a Columbo character, just before leaving, just pause and think, have I asked everything I need to ask? Is there another question that I need to ask? So just before you leave, think about Columbo. What would he do? Some things stay with you. Someone once told me, if you feel scared in a house during a visit, imagine what it feels like to be a child there. You need to be brave. I had that experience again recently. I was talking to a colleague about professional curiosity. She said, I always think, if you are ever wary about asking a question, then there's probably a real need for it. Easy to remember, isn't it? It captures so much of what we have been talking about in these presentations. Listening to your senses, some part of you knows something needs to be asked, but your discomfort is getting in the way. You need to be brave. We talk about some questions being stupid ones. We usually mean that we're reluctant to ask them because we should know something already, or because it may show we hadn't understood something that was explained to us before. There are no such thing as a stupid question. There are examples of questions that I have asked parents over the years, and I have been quite surprised by the answers I have had. Where does the child sleep? Who lives in your home? What other adults are involved in your children's lives? And what other professionals do you have contact with? These are very direct questions, aren't they? These examples, I was clearly curious about something specific and asking it directly. This is professional curiosity. I remember asking the question, where does your child sleep? I did it because there were a lot of adults living in the house. It was quite small. I felt a little nervous as the uncle had been sofa surfing and there had been some concerns about him in the past. Think about peeling the layers of an onion. With each layer, you get closer to the heart of the onion itself. As we peel back the layers, asking more and more questions, we are exploring an issue more deeply. This avoids us staying at that superficial level. Staying at the superficial level is not effective, and we're not getting the full picture in our assessments. So we need to peel back, going deeper and deeper, getting closer to the heart of the issue. So, how do we do this? We hear a lot about open and closed questions. Closed questions shut down your line of inquiry. It leads to an answer and an end to your inquiry, whereas an open question opens things out. You have more possibilities. A closed question gives a brief answer, often a yes or a no. If someone asked me, "Is your name Paul?" my reply would be yes. But if someone asked me, "What is it about the name Paul that you like the most?" that is an open question that invites exploration. A practice example would be, you ask, "Did you tell him you didn't want him bringing in his friends to the house to take drugs?" The answer you're going to get is going to be a yes or a no. That's a closed question. The benefits of open question are that they open out the subject and you have a chance of getting more information. For example, if you asked, "What kind of discussions do you have with Dave about his friends coming here?" Or, "Tell me what Dave said the last time you raised this with him." Think about the questions you tend to use. Do they tend to be open or closed? Try to use open questions. These are more useful to help you gather information. Open questions begin with why, how, describe, or tell me about. For example, what does that mean? Tell me about what happened next. How did this happen? How do you feel? And why did you do that? We hear a lot about active listening, really paying attention to what is said, rather than waiting for a gap to say something yourself, or being so focused on thinking about what your next question should be that you don't really listen. Another technique is reflective listening. This is also important. This is listening and reflecting what you have heard back to the family. It demonstrates that you have listened and understood. It provides an opportunity for them to reply if they think you hadn't understood their point. This leads to a common understanding about things. As you reflect and confirm there is an active two-way conversation, it can encourage further disclosure. It also emphasises ownership of a position or view because this is discussed and reinforced through reflection. For example, "I thought it was really interesting the way you described your walk to school with Bethany and that it was your private time together." Our skills in professional curiosity don't have to be verbal. We also need to be aware of non-verbal reactions. For example, changes in body movements, posture and rhythms, changes in facial expression, smiles, frowns, raised eyebrows, changes in eyes, changes in breathing, blushing or paleness, vocal qualities, tone, volume, speed, pauses, silence. We quite often think about how people match each other when they are communicating well, matching body language and pace, and then you ask something that jars with them, and they sit back and cross their arms. This tells you something, doesn't it? A trigger to becoming more curious about that. We can also pay attention to what people say. It could be a discrepancy between something they say and do, or something they say and something they said a few months ago. They may contradict themselves. Again, a prompt for curiosity. In a previous presentation, we introduced this idea of stepping into a zone of curiosity. We also talked about trying to judge when you've been curious enough. Things like body language, non-verbal, discrepancies are all potential invitations into that zone of curiosity. But challenging someone about this can be quite directive and threatening. For example, when we talk enthusiastically about joining a gym, none of us like that friend that tells us the chocolate eclair we are stuffing into our mouth doesn't really square up. Like these skills in being curious, we can develop our skills in calling out discrepancy. For example, you have thought ahead to a difficult conversation you need to have. You are reflecting, preparing for action. You imagine the conversation. Help me figure this out. You've told me that keeping custody of your daughter and being a good parent are the most important things to you now. How does your heroin use fit in with that? You reflect on this and decide that doesn't quite sound right. You reframe it. You have told me that keeping custody of your daughter is most important to you, and you want to be a good parent. but you're also telling me that now isn't the time to stop using heroin. It sounds quite a dilemma for you. Tell me how this feels from your perspective. Preparing for difficult conversations such as this is one of the key skills of professional curiosity. These examples of calling out discrepancies are examples of what is called Socratic questioning. If you remember the classic Columbo films, he was very good at using Socratic questions. He used to say, "There's just one more thing," and pose a Socratic question. This is a way of exploring complex things, asking questions that challenge assumptions. What lies behind these, and what the person really means? The questions tend to be open and get the other person to think more deeply about what they are saying. It can be quite challenging, and of course, challenge can trigger defence, so we need to be careful when we use it. For example, if we just go back to think about you visiting Dave's flat, what are the consequences of you meeting all your old friends there or seeing them using heroin? The main areas of Socratic questioning are to challenge assumptions, examine the evidence and rationale for something, clarify why people think some things, clarifying how some people understand things, considering consequences, pose probing questions about motivation. Some examples of Socratic questions. You're assuming she'd do that. What makes you think that? If that wasn't the case, what other explanation could there be? Why do you think Shelley tried to take all the money? You're convinced about that, aren't you? What would you have to see to make you change your mind? If Carl started taking Mike to nursery, how would that affect you and Christy? Why do you think I was asking you about Shane? Why is included in the list of open questions, but it needs to be treated with some care. It is by nature a challenge. Why did you do that? Or why was Benjamin in the flat, despite the court order? When asking questions, I try to avoid why questions, because they tend to trigger a defensive response from parents. I therefore try to rephrase the question in my mind to consciously avoid the why word. For example, instead of why was Benjamin in Dave's flat, which clearly holds a criticism, you could rephrase it to, you said that Benjamin was in the flat on Saturday night. Tell me more about what happened. Or, when Benjamin was there, who else was around at that time? When holding difficult conversations and challenging families, it is important to plan ahead, prepare and reflect for action. Make sure you'll have enough time to cover the essential parts of what you need to discuss. Make sure you are clear about what you want to cover. Make sure you keep to the agenda and focus on what you need to discuss. Remember that the focus is on the needs of the child or children. Try not to be critical or confrontational. Stick to the facts. Have evidence to back up what you say, making sure that your decisions can be justified and have been made in a transparent way. We focus mainly on our interaction with another person, using words and non-verbal information. It is also important to think wider. Try to see the whole system you are working with. For example, remember to listen to people who know the other person, speak on their behalf, or who have important knowledge about them. Be alert to those who prevent professionals from seeing or listening to the person, and do not rely on the opinions of only one person wherever possible. There are other tools that can be used to assist you to being curious. Genograms and family trees are graphical and appeal to some people and can be a very good way of engaging some families. Having paper to look at sometimes makes confrontation less awkward. For example, who's this Mike here? I haven't heard about him before. What is the child's life like? Asking for the details of a typical day for the child to understand the day-to-day life experience of the child. Asking different family members for this account can be interesting, may indicate contradictions or how they perceive things. Using the magic wand question, if I had a magic wand, what 3 or 4 things would they like to change about their lives? Their answers can give us good insights into their motivation, wants and priorities. This brings us to the end of our presentations about professional curiosity. Over these 6 videos, we have looked at how professional curiosity may have its roots in failures and mistakes. You missed a bit, but reminding ourselves that practitioners exercise professional curiosity all the time and have many of the skills already in place. We need to be professionally curious so that we don't miss anything. We described professional curiosity as being on a continuum of not being curious enough, being curious enough, and being too curious. Not being curious enough is a problem, especially if we miss something. Finding this balance is difficult. We talked about being in the curious zone and the skills we use. We can also develop the skills about how to be curious, but also extend our understanding of triggers to curiosity. For example, being more informed about the signs of abuse or disguised compliance. We emphasise being aware of your own reactions, that ability to sense what is happening for you in the moment. We develop our practice through training, good quality supervision and reflective practice. I encourage you to think about some of the ideas we have looked at in these presentations and how they apply to your own practice. And as you experience curiosity in your own work, always remember to reflect on practice. You can do this yourself, with peers, or informal supervision. Thank you.